Everyone tells you to develop your emotional intelligence. Nobody tells you what it costs you to actually have it. And I mean that literally. There are entire industries built around selling you the idea that emotional intelligence is a superpower, that if you just feel more, understand people better, and tune into the emotional frequency of every room you walk into, your life will be richer and your relationships will be deeper. There's truth in that. There is. But there's a side of this conversation that almost nobody is willing to have. The side where high emotional intelligence isn't just a gift, it's a weight. Where the same wiring that makes you perceptive and warm and deeply human also leaves you exhausted, depleted, and sometimes profoundly alone. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive, this video is for you. If you've ever walked out of a social situation feeling more drained than when you walked in, this is for you. If you've ever said yes when everything inside you was screaming no because you could feel the other person's disappointment before they even showed it, this one's for you. We're going through 8 real psychological costs of high emotional intelligence, backed by research, without sugarcoating a single one. Not because these are reasons to shut yourself off or stop feeling, but because if you've been carrying this weight your whole life without understanding why, you deserve to finally have a name for it. Let's start. Number 1. You absorb everyone's pain and your nervous system pays the price. There's a concept in psychology called emotional contagion. The idea is that emotions are, in a very real sense, contagious. We pick them up from the people around us the way we pick up a cold. For most people, this happens at a low level. They notice a vibe, adjust, move on. But for someone with high emotional intelligence, the contagion runs deep. A 2021 study published in Frontiers in Psychology found that people with high susceptibility to emotional contagion showed significantly elevated rates of emotional exhaustion, not just feeling other people's emotions, but physiologically replicating them. Your heart rate actually shifts. Your stress hormones actually spike. You don't just understand that your friend is devastated. You feel devastated alongside them, in your body, whether you want to or not. Think about what that means day to day. You walk into the office, and your coworker is stressed about a deadline. Now you're tense, even though your project is fine. Your partner is anxious. Your stomach tightens. A stranger on the subway looks miserable, and suddenly you feel a weight you can't explain. When you're wired this way, the world becomes a constant feed of other people's emotional states, and you are receiving all of it, all the time. That's not sensitivity as a character flaw. That's a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, but doing it without a circuit breaker. Number 2, you burn out faster and harder. Here's a number that should stop you cold. In professions that attract high EI people, nurses, therapists, social workers, counselors, burnout rates in the United States run between 40 and 50%. According to the National Academy of Medicine, physicians burn out at nearly twice the rate of the general workforce. Nearly twice. And the common thread across all of those fields isn't the hours or the pay. It's the emotional labor. Compassion fatigue is the clinical term, not a personal failure, not weakness. It's what happens when empathy is your default operating mode and you never learned how to turn it off. Your emotional reserves get drawn down faster than they can be restored. You start going through the motions. You feel disconnected from the work, from the people, from yourself. And the darkest part? The people most vulnerable to compassion fatigue are the ones who care the most, not the ones who don't care enough. If you've ever felt guilty for feeling burnt out when all you were doing was just helping people, that's why. You weren't doing too little. You were giving too much to a system that never taught you how to protect what you were giving from. Number 3, you are measurably more vulnerable to depression. Not metaphorically, measurably. A 2021 meta-analysis by Yan and colleagues, pulling data from 21 separate studies, found that effective empathy, which is the ability to actually feel what other people feel, rather than just understand it intellectually, was significantly and positively correlated with depression. The correlation held across studies, across demographics, across age groups, and in 2025, Biological Psychiatry published a paper titled The Dark Side of Empathy, finding that excessive affective empathy is a meaningful risk factor for multiple internalizing disorders, including depression and anxiety. Not a minor factor, a structural one. Why? Because when you feel what others feel, you carry a cumulative emotional load that most people around you never register. You absorb grief. You absorb fear. You absorb other people's unresolved pain, and because you feel it as your own, you process it as your own. Over months and years, that builds. The world's suffering doesn't stay at a comfortable distance, it lands. And if you don't have the tools to process it and release it, and most highly empathetic people were never given those tools, it accumulates into something that looks exactly like depression, because in many ways it is. Number 4. You are easier to manipulate, uncomfortable truth, but you need to hear it. A 2020 study published in Sage Open found that individuals with high emotional intelligence were more susceptible to emotional manipulation, not less. The reason is almost painfully logical. You feel other people's distress so acutely that when someone signals distress, even artificially, even strategically, your instinct is to relieve it. You can't help it. The discomfort of watching someone suffer, even if that suffering is performed, is real for you. And that makes you vulnerable to guilt, to pity plays, to emotional pressure campaigns. The people in your life who cry to get what they want, the ones who go cold and distant until you apologize for something that wasn't your fault, the ones who say, "I guess you just don't care about me," when you try to hold a boundary. They may not even be doing it consciously, but your wiring responds to those signals. You read the emotional temperature, you feel the drop, and your instinct is to fix it, to smooth it, to make the pain stop, even when the fix costs you something real. High emotional intelligence without strong self-awareness becomes a vulnerability, because the same radar that helps you understand people can be pointed at you and used against you. Number 5. Saying no feels like violence. Not discomfort, not awkwardness. Violence, like you're actively doing something cruel. Here's why. When you have high emotional intelligence, you don't just know someone will be disappointed if you say no. You feel their disappointment in advance, in your body, before you've even finished the sentence. You anticipate the shift in their face. You register the emotional temperature change that's coming. And because that feeling is real and it hurts, your brain starts classifying boundaries as a source of pain rather than a source of protection. So you say yes. Again. You take on the extra work. You stay at the party longer than you wanted. You answer the 11 p.m. text. You absorb the emotional crisis that honestly isn't yours to hold. And over time, a very specific kind of resentment builds. Not loud resentment, quiet, heavy, guilty resentment. Because you also understand why they needed you, and that understanding makes it hard to stay angry. The irony is brutal. High emotional intelligence should make you better at relationships, and in many ways it does. But the inability to draw lines, because drawing lines requires tolerating someone else's discomfort, is how the most emotionally generous people end up the most chronically drained. Number 6. You crave depth that most people can't give you, and that loneliness is real. When you feel things at the level we've been describing, shallow conversation isn't just boring, it's almost painful. You can't sit in small talk about the weather and feel satisfied. You need to know what someone actually thinks, what they actually fear, what they're not saying out loud. You need emotional substance, and most people, for a whole range of reasons, either can't go there or won't. Researcher Satoshi Kanazawa found that highly intelligent and highly empathetic people consistently report less satisfaction from casual socializing than the general population. Not because they're antisocial, because they're holding out for something that most social environments don't offer. Depth, realness, a conversation where both people actually show up. So you end up in this specific kind of loneliness, surrounded by people, but not really seen, going through the social motions while feeling more alone than someone who stayed home. That disconnect between what you're capable of feeling and what most interactions actually provide is one of the quietest costs of high emotional intelligence. Nobody talks about it, but a lot of you know exactly what I'm describing. Number 7. You are never fully off in social situations. Every room you walk into, you're working, even when you don't mean to be. High emotional intelligence means you read micro-expressions. You catch the slight hesitation before someone answers. You notice when the tone of someone's voice doesn't match their words. You pick up on who's uncomfortable, who's putting on a performance, who's pretending to be okay. You track all of it, sometimes consciously, usually not, and your brain treats it as data that needs processing. Most people walk into a party and just exist in it. You walk into a party and immediately start building a social map. Who's tense with who needs to be checked on, whose smile doesn't reach their eyes. You can't not do it, and by the time you get home, you're exhausted from a kind of labor that nobody around you can even see you doing. There's no downtime because the social processing never really stops. You replay conversations, you second-guess a look someone gave you 3 hours ago. You wonder if you said something that landed wrong. Other people can close that tab. For you, it runs in the background constantly, and over time, the cumulative drain is significant. Number 8. You lose yourself in other people. Of all 8 costs, this one might be the most quietly devastating. When your empathy runs deep enough, the line between your emotions and someone else's emotions starts to blur. Psychologists call this identity diffusion, and it shows up more often in highly empathetic people than most research has traditionally acknowledged. You spend so much time inside other people's emotional worlds that you lose track of your own. What do you actually want? Separate from what would make them happy. What do you actually feel when nobody else's feelings are in the room? A lot of high EI people find those questions surprisingly hard to answer, because the habit of tuning into others was often built early, sometimes as a survival skill, in a family where reading the emotional temperature wasn't optional, it was necessary. And that habit, over years, can quietly displace your own sense of self. You become the person who holds space for everyone, the one who intuitively knows what others need, and somewhere in all of that, your own needs become an afterthought, not because you don't matter, but because you got so fluent in other people's inner lives that you became a stranger to your own. So where does that leave us? None of this means emotional intelligence is something to suppress or be ashamed of. Not for a second. The research doesn't say that. The experience of high EI people doesn't say that. What it says is that this trait, like any real capacity, comes with real costs. And the reason most people don't know about those costs is because the self-help industry found it more profitable to sell you emotional intelligence as a superpower than to tell you it also needs protecting. Understanding these 8 costs isn't about excusing yourself from growth. It's about stopping the unconscious payments. It's about finally having language for the exhaustion, the manipulation, the loneliness, the loss of self, and recognizing those experiences as the natural consequences of a trait you were never properly taught to manage. You can be deeply empathetic and still protect your energy. You can be emotionally perceptive and still hold a boundary without it feeling like cruelty. You can crave depth and still build a life that doesn't exhaust you. But none of that happens accidentally. It happens when you understand what you're actually dealing with. High emotional intelligence is not a weakness. It never was, but it is a responsibility. To yourself first, before anyone else. So let me ask you something. Of these 8 costs, which one hit the closest to home? Because I'm willing to bet there's one on this list that made you feel, for the first time, like someone finally put words to something you've been living for years. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, when the real truth was that you were simply feeling more than the people around you knew how to handle, I want to hear that too. If this video gave you something real, a name for an experience, a moment of recognition, anything at all, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. You probably already know exactly who that person is. And if you want to keep exploring this kind of psychology, the real stuff, the stuff that actually explains why you operate the way you do, make sure you're subscribed, because the next video is going after something just as counterintuitive and just as honest.